As in most sub-Saharan African countries, access to electricity in Malawi is a major challenge to which the authorities are devoting importance. According to the 2018 population census carried out by the Office for National Statistics, ONS, access to electricity in Malawi was 11% for a population of around 8 million, a figure raised to 13.4% in 2020, according to the International Energy Agency, thanks to the diversification of the country's energy mix. In this new edition of your program Decryptage, we will discuss the opportunities and challenges of energy supply in Malawi with Ibrahim Matola. Mr. Matola, welcome to Africa 24. You recently took part in Sustainable Trade Africa. What are your impressions of the event?
First and foremost, what can be done according to my understanding, because COP shouldn't be a talk show. It should be a platform now for action. What we are expecting is that action-oriented. Yes, polluters should face it. And when you look at Africa as a continent, it's just a receiver or just being taken by surprise with the climate change issues. For example, we have seen the cyclone very close to each other every year, in and out. From cyclone Idai, from cyclone Gombe, from cyclone Anna, and then this year we had also cyclone Freddy. But when you look at this, there is somewhere where this issue started. And people should not be, this is not the time to be pointing fingers. And they would want Africa states to follow what they want. No, this is the time where African states, we should have a caucus. When we are going for negotiations, we should send good and capable member states and the representatives who can face our counterparts in the developing countries, because they're the ones who polluted because of the industries. We were denied the industries. They take raw material into their continents. But when it comes to polluters should pay, they are dilly-dallying. This is now the time that these people, those in the developing countries, they should look after the continent which has never benefited, which has never polluted. Yes, we are talking about transition. We are talking about moving away from emissions. But when you look at those who have polluted, they are not fulfilling. So it needs maybe a legal backing, not just a sweeping statement, because we have been keeping on postponing year in, year out, and we are not seeing results. So it should be legal binding that this COP, when we are leaving, before we go to another COP, because the targets are being set, and we're talking about 2030 and 2050. 2030 is just around the corner. But what has been done so much in order to mitigate? These are the questions or takeaway which every member state should be asking, and those who have been polluting should also be concerned, because the effects of climate change are real, and we have seen many countries, the islands, the Caribbean, the Pacific, suffering because of the consequence of climate change.
As a landlocked country in Southern Africa, Malawi has one of the lowest electrification rates, with only 11% of the population having regular access to energy. What is the strategy for improving access to energy in your country?
So an initiative from the government of His Excellency Dr. Chakwera, that we should take this power to the rural areas. So what has been done is that there is Malawi Rural Electrification Project, what we call it in brief, MAREP. So there is an authority which looks after the rural electrification, where the money is being collected through the fuel levy in order to support those who are living in the rural areas. But also, we are not only targeting on the national grid, but they are other very difficult to reach areas in order to construct a power line. So what has been done is that to have mini grids, which are off grids, whether it can be solar or it can be hydro, these mini grids, so that the percentage can be powering with what we are producing. So there are many initiatives in order to scale up the percentage of access to electricity. So indeed, you're right, we were the lowest, but now we are picking up because we have also support from the World Bank through the Malawi Energy Access Project, where it has injected money into the utility company so that they can connect those who were when the government of His Excellency was coming into this administration in 2020, we found out that there were about 286,000 not connected from 2016 up to 2020. So these are the programs which we are trying to clear the backlog, but also the new connections, so that some people just needed a pole, some needed just a meter, some needed just a cable, few meters to connect them. So all these, we have just tried to get the money from the World Bank and try to connect as many as we can so that access to electricity can be done. But also we are targeting through the Malawi Rural Electrification Program. We are targeting the training centers. We are targeting the schools, the clinics. We are receiving medicines from well-wishers, UNICEF, whatever you name it, World Health Organization. But these medicines and these vaccines cannot be kept in the rural areas because there's no electricity. Hence, we end up having a campaign of just to dispose those vaccines. Yet, we are going to have non-productive citizens because we're just injecting them in order to please somebody who gave us those vaccines. However, it is time for African states to take care of those who are in the rural areas, reaching out so that the clinics and hospitals which are in the rural area should have electricity, whether it is solar, but they can have bankable places where they can keep those vaccines. But not only vaccines, the morgue, the mortuary. We are having, like during the COVID, it was very difficult where to keep the bodies. So these are the things which is the challenges and the eye opener for the countries or for member states, that we should also minimize the cutting down of the trees by reaching out to those people, giving them electricity, giving them what is not making them to stay in the rural area. For example, a guy went to study as a medical doctor, and today he has to use the laptop to communicate with his doctors, his friends' doctors online. But he can't use his phone, he can't use his laptop, he can't use even, he doesn't know what is happening in the world. He doesn't watch the TV because the electricity is very far from him and he cannot stay in that area. He will just excuse himself and look for transfer and stay in the urban areas. So we have this congestion of urbanization. People are moving from rural areas going into town following the electricity. So it is time for member states to give the electricity to those who are in the rural areas in order to minimize the migration of people from rural areas into urban areas. But also those who are cutting charcoal following the people who are in town. So when the demand is low, the supplier will naturally go. So we need to start with them by giving them power so that they can reduce cutting down of the trees.
On the sidelines of COP28, you are calling for greater global cooperation in the fight against climate change. Yet Africa has been waiting 13 years for the rich countries' promise to contribute $100 billion a year to help Africa countries for adapting to climate change. Do you see the carbon market as an alternative?
First and foremost is that the divide and rule should not be applied. What we need is that this carbon money should be given to the developing countries. without conditions attached to. What we don't like is that they give us as a grant, but big chunk of that money is being given as a loan. This is the time not to be giving loans, because Africa and the Caribbean and the Pacific are so exhausted with a lot of burden on loans. So what we need is that this money should be just given so that African states and the Caribbean and Pacific, they should do all the programs in order to mitigate the issues of climate change. So carbon credit should be given without conditions. No conditionalities attached to. That will help us to move into this journey together, because alone Africa cannot fight the climate change. And alone Europe and America cannot fight the climate change. The Middle East cannot fight alone the climate change. We need collaboration, coordination, so that we can meet the targets which we are setting.